Imagine waking up one morning to the shocking news that Vladimir Putin, the man who has ruled Russia with an iron fist for over 2 decades, is dead. The figure who transformed a post-Soviet Russia, once seen as a fading power on the global stage, into a resurgent and feared Eurasian superpower, is suddenly gone. But what happens next? Could his death bring peace to the war-torn lands of Ukraine? Or would it unleash chaos within Russia's borders, perhaps even civil war? This is not just a hypothetical question. It's a geopolitical puzzle with far-reaching consequences. To truly understand the impact of Putin's death, we must delve into who he was, how he shaped modern Russia, and what his absence might mean for one of the world's most powerful but fragile nations. Putin's rise, from KGB agent to Kremlin mastermind. Vladimir Putin's story is rooted in his shadowy past as a KGB intelligence officer. His experience in Soviet-era espionage shaped his worldview. A fierce belief in strong centralized control, suspicion of the West, and an obsession with restoring Russia's stature as a global heavyweight. Many commentators have drawn comparisons between Putin and notorious historical autocrats, even calling him a modern-day Hitler, a phrase loaded with moral and political implications. Yet, unlike Hitler's rapid rise and catastrophic fall, Putin has maintained a calculated and enduring grip on power. Since assuming the presidency in 1999, Putin has systematically rebuilt Russia's political and social framework. He has carefully curated an image of hypermasculinity and strength, appealing to nationalist pride and nostalgia for the Soviet era. This projection is not just theatrical. It's a strategic tool used to command loyalty and suppress dissent. The machinery of control, media, laws, and fear. Putin's regime operates a sophisticated apparatus of control, especially over information. Russian television, which remains the primary news source for approximately 70% of Russians, is tightly controlled by the state. The Kremlin dictates narratives, often portraying Putin as Russia's indispensable protector. At the same time, the government imposes harsh censorship on the internet and independent media, silencing opposition voices and limiting access to alternative viewpoints. Legal reforms under Putin's watch have extended his presidency repeatedly, allowing him to rule potentially until 2036. This deliberate manipulation of Russia's democratic institutions reveals how Putin's power is less about popular mandate and more about maintaining an unchallengeable regime. Opposition figures like Alexei Navalny, who have dared to challenge this authority, have been imprisoned or sidelined, making genuine democratic competition nearly impossible. The war in Ukraine, Putin's legacy of conflict. One of the most defining aspects of Putin's rule is the invasion of Ukraine, a decision that shocked the world and reshaped global geopolitics. The war has resulted in massive civilian casualties, displacement, and destruction, with tragic stories of innocent children caught in the crossfire. Putin's justification hinged on fears of NATO's eastward expansion and a desire to reassert Russian dominance over its former Soviet neighbors. The conflict has brought immense suffering but paradoxically also sparked a surge in nationalist support for Putin inside Russia, pushing his approval ratings back up to near 70%, even amid growing economic hardships. Yet, beneath this surface support lies a divided public. Polling suggests that over half of Russians still believe Ukraine and Russia should remain independent nations. Power vacuum and political chaos. The immediate aftermath of Putin's death. Putin's sudden death would create a power vacuum unprecedented since Stalin's demise in 1953. Without the singular, iron-willed figure dominating Russia's political landscape, internal rivalries among oligarchs, military leaders, and politicians would intensify. The initial constitutional mechanism places Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin as the interim leader for 90 days until an election can be held. But in practice, this would likely be a turbulent period marked by ruthless power struggles. The question is, who truly holds power in Putin's Russia? While Mishustin is the nominal successor, the real battle would likely be fought behind closed doors, with factions vying to control key institutions. The security services, military command, economic resources, and media outlets. Without Putin's authoritarian oversight, the facade of centralized control could fracture, leading to scenarios reminiscent of Game of Thrones. Alliances forged and broken in rapid succession, each player desperate to assert dominance. The The risk of militarization, a new and dangerous leadership. If Putin failed to designate a clear and accepted successor, the military could seize the opportunity to fill the void. This prospect is alarming given Russia's vast arsenal of conventional and nuclear weapons. The potential for a hardline military leader to rise threatens not only internal stability, but global security. Unlike the carefully managed personality cult around Putin, a military-dominated regime might lack diplomatic subtlety, increasing the risk of escalation in Ukraine or beyond. Moreover, this could destabilize command and control over Russia's chemical and nuclear weapons, heightening the risk of miscalculation or unauthorized use. Economic collapse and international isolation. The external pressures mount. Putin's aggressive policies and the war in Ukraine have triggered a worldwide backlash. Economic sanctions imposed by the United States, European Union, and other allies have crippled the Russian economy. The Russian ruble has plummeted, losing almost all value against major currencies. The removal of Russian banks from the SWIFT international payment system has disrupted billions of dollars in transactions. Russian citizens face unprecedented hardship. Travel bans and airspace closures have isolated the country, restricting not only business, but personal movement. Western consumer goods have become scarce or prohibitively expensive. Meanwhile, ordinary Russians, many of whom subsist on modest incomes, are seeing their purchasing power erode daily. Could opposition forces rise? The Navalny factor. The death of Putin could galvanize opposition movements long suppressed. Alexei Navalny, the prominent anti-corruption activist and Putin critic currently imprisoned, might emerge as a symbol for change, potentially released or gaining mass support in exile. However, the opposition's path to power is fraught with obstacles: decades of repression, fragmented leadership, and the challenge of overcoming entrenched elites. The risk is that unrest could spiral into violent confrontations, especially if economic deprivation intensifies social discontent. The global supply chain. Ripple effects beyond Russia. Russia's role as a global exporter of energy, grains, and minerals means that its instability would have cascading effects worldwide. The country supplies nearly 30% of the world's grain used in cereals and is a key provider of oil, gas, precious metals, and industrial materials. Cutting Russia out of these supply chains could send gas prices soaring to historic highs, worsen food shortages, and disrupt manufacturing globally. The international community faces the daunting challenge of balancing sanctions with the need to maintain essential resources. Rebuilding or reinventing. The future of Russian foreign policy. Whoever takes control after Putin faces a pivotal choice: continue the aggressive, isolationist stance or seek rapprochement with the West. Economic realities may force the new leadership to reconsider Russia's place on the world stage. Returning territories, such as Crimea and Donbass, to Ukraine could become a bargaining chip for lifting sanctions and restoring trade relations. This would be a profound shift after years of conflict and propaganda, potentially restoring national pride in a new, peaceful Russia. The fragility of the Russian Federation. Could civil war erupt? Russia is a vast, multi-ethnic federation held together tenuously by Putin's authoritarian regime. Without his centralized authority, centrifugal forces may pull regions apart. Ethnic tensions, economic disparities, and regional grievances could ignite into open conflict. Civil war is a chilling possibility, a disintegration of Russia into smaller, competing entities with devastating humanitarian consequences. Such a scenario would reshape the Eurasian geopolitical landscape and present enormous challenges to global security. A turning point for Russia and the world. The death of Vladimir Putin would mark the end of an era, but also the beginning of profound uncertainty. The world would watch closely as Russia navigates through political chaos, economic hardship, and social upheaval. For Ukraine, this moment could herald peace and sovereignty restored. For Russians, it could mean liberation or turmoil. For the international community, it poses a test of diplomacy, resilience, and strategic foresight. Understanding these dynamics is crucial, because what happens in Russia does not stay in Russia. The ripple effects will touch every continent, influencing global stability for years to come. Having studied global history and geopolitics extensively, I believe the key factors shaping Russia's post-Putin future will be the interplay between internal power struggles and external pressures. Authoritarian regimes are inherently fragile without a strong leader, and Putin's long reign masked deep structural weaknesses. If the international community offers a pathway for Russia to reintegrate peacefully into the global order, the country could avoid disaster. But if chaos prevails, the consequences would be dire, not only for Russians, but for the entire world. This moment represents both an unprecedented risk and a rare opportunity, one that demands careful, informed attention.